Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I just did a review of Mr. Crypt, reprinted in Case You Missed It, issue 1 by Alterna Comics. My point was that it's kind of like a new character with really like old roots in Golden Age comic book storytelling, and you should definitely check it out. And I was thinking about Golden Age comic books. I had this on mine, which is a treasury of the Riddler stories from Batman Arkham. And they've been doing this since I was a little kid. They would like do like the best Batman stories ever told and the best Joker stories ever told. And what's nice about that is if it's a greatest hits book, you skip over a lot of stinkers in the middle years, and you get to just some of like the best. Like there is an advantage to publishing best hit books. So this is a best hit of Riddler stories, meaning that it kind of covers a whole range of years for the character. And since I was thinking about Golden Age comics, I wanted to talk about kind of like 3 stories briefly. So the Riddler and Crimes Puzzle Contest are 2 Golden Age stories penciled by Dick Sprang, who's not only famous for having like the best name for a Golden Age Batman penciler ever, but also for kind of like inventing the style of big over-the-top funny adventures for Batman and Robin. The inker for both was Charles Paris. I used to not respect inkers much when I was a little kid, and now I'm starting to respect them. And my only observation about the art for the Golden Age stories is it's very straightforward, very simple cartoon art, very professional, and it doesn't distract you. Some of the covers from this era, well, I didn't like Win Mortimer's cover. I'll show you that later. I did like Dick Sprang's concept for a cover. Now, the Silver Age story, what's interesting about it is because of the Comics Code Authority, there were significant changes in the comics market. Like a lot of horror comics couldn't really exist anymore. I think it was voluntary. Companies voluntarily accepted the limitations of the Comics Code Authority, but there isn't that much of a difference between Golden Age style Batman and the Silver Age story. Now, I think later in the Silver Age story, Batman got crazier and crazier as they were trying to find ways to get kids interested, so they'd send Batman into space onto these like really trippy alien worlds a lot in the Silver Age, but you can see the direct influence from Dick Sprang. Even some of the panels get copied over. So the penciler for that is Sheldon Moldoff, and I thought that Sheldon he was clearly taking direct inspiration from Dick Sprang, but also maybe trying to pull in some more dynamism. And I'll just show you the credits there, so I don't read it all. And what's interesting is you're kind of gradually seeing the development of the art from a very simple cartoon art to a gradually more developed, like Renaissance informed art. So this is the cover I was talking about where, there's something wrong about the Riddler there. It's just the most basic idea. Hey kids, there's a new bad guy and he uses puzzles and Batman and Robin are gonna get trapped in the puzzle and it's bright yellow, and that's the whole point. So the point of this video is respect the Golden Age. I've seen, maybe this might have been like a year ago, I saw someone on Twitter with a hot take that the Golden Age sucked and things are so much better now. And what I think that's a partial perspective. Obviously, in the kind of years since comics have become popular, more developed artists have done comics. More thought-provoking writers have come into comics. It's sort of like as comics have succeeded, it's been more cool to work in comics, meaning it attracts more talented people. Like I think for most of the Golden Age, the people who were drawing comics were the people who wanted to be illustrators, and they didn't have the chops to be kind of Norman Rockwell style illustrators. And then as the illustrated book market started to die, a lot of that talent seeded into the comic book world, which is part of my thesis that the history of comic books is the history of the continuation of Renaissance art, but that's for another video. The importance of the Golden Age era of comic books is the sheer amount of stuff they just created out of nowhere. Right? And like the Joker is an example of this character. One of the interesting things about the early versions of the Penguin and the Riddler is clearly for Golden Age Batman, like Joker, Riddler, and Penguin were all just bad guys of equal threat that Batman would fight. And it was only in like the 80s and 90s that writers started deciding that the Riddler was a joke and the Joker was, super serious and was Batman's best villain. It's kind of a little tragic because I feel like we haven't even tapped into all the potentials of some of these characters. So the reason the Joker, I think, became Batman's best villain is it's such a great idea. Like a clown who is a bad guy. That's just magic. Someone had to sit down and think, we need a bad guy for Batman. How about a clown who kills people by making them laugh themselves to death? How do you come up with that? You have to have this raw
ability, this raw space, I think I'd call it. A raw space where you just go into that, you think of a bunch of ideas, you say, yes, let's go with that idea, and you go with it. Because, hey, kids, we got to get a comic out as fast as possible. The kids are eating this up. Let's just throw all these ideas out there and see what the kids like, and we'll sell more of what they like. Right? So the Riddler is something like that, where the basic idea, it's so dumb, it's so simple.
He's a guy who was a cheater as a child. He cheated at riddles, and even when he became an expert
At riddles, he still cheated, and he decided that he needs to now cheat at riddles to become a master of crime and outwit Batman and Robin.
I like this panel where it's got this really simple crossword that an 8-year-old
could figure out, and it shows it on the billboard, and then it shows Batman and Robin swinging in front of it to give the kid a chance to look at the crossword and solve it before Batman does. Yes. So, this is Batman gets to be a detective. Now, he's solving really simple puzzles a kid could solve, maybe, if they're really familiar with puzzles and riddles. But this is a perfect type of villain for Batman, because I like Batman as a detective. I don't like Batman as a Mary Sue God who outsmarts everybody and is prepared for... Well, I think it's okay for Batman to have contingency plans since he doesn't have superpowers, but I don't like it if that's stretched to the point where he feels like he automatically wins every fight because he's automatically smarter than everybody. All of these simple old Riddler stories are about Batman having to work it out and kind of see through the riddle within the riddle. And all of these informed the later versions of Batman you love. So they literally have the line about when is corn hard to escape from, when it's a maze, that would later be in Batman the Animated Series.
I think this whole, one of these stories, the third one, was a whole episode, two episode, because they had cliffhangers of the Adam West TV series. I like this Dick Sprang concept where it's like Batman is the answer to every word in the crossword, but it doesn't really line up down there, but that's okay because they made sure that the most easy to read ones are lined up, and the things that are kind of like a jumble of words, that's where Batman's bursting out. But the thing I wanted to say about the Riddler is, like the Joker, he's a character with a lot of untapped potential in his early form. He's an intellectual who is so smart he can easily commit the perfect crime. But because he's so egotistical, he has to leave childish clues for Batman to solve because he wants to outwit Batman.
It's not about the crime for him, it's about outwitting Batman. Which is actually a really great villain for Batman because Batman is an intellectual hero who solves crimes with his brain. And yeah, he does beat up people because he's also that action character, but he doesn't have super strength, he doesn't have super speed. So an intellectual villain for Batman is great. Now, for some reason in the 80s and 90s, I think they decided that the Riddler was kind of a joke and kind of a D-lister, and
the Joker kind of became ascendant as the only Batman villain that Batman ever seems to fight in most of the cartoons and things. I think that's a missed opportunity. There's so many opportunities to do different spins or takes
on these characters. I think that, especially the cartoons, which are aimed at the kids, they've got to have less of a Joker emphasis and have less of Joker being Batman's villain every single episode so that they can give some of his other rogues gallery a chance to shine. Because Joker is one of the greatest villains ever, but Batman has one of the best rogues galleries ever, and it's a shame if they don't get some
love too. So I noticed in this Silver Age story, they repeat this idea like 3 times because it's the, hey kids, they're gonna punch the Riddler and he's gonna be like a toy punching bag that flops back and forth. How will he do that? And I liked how they kind of repeat the idea on the cover and then on the splash page and then once again when it really happens. And these are the 2 most dynamic panels. I think they were putting most of their love and attention into the cover and title page art to get the sale. And then the interior art was a little bit more stiff, but I liked how they directly homaged the Dick Sprang panels and then clearly got copy-pasted over. I like how the Riddler has a chance to redeem himself and he portrays himself as a good person at first who just wants to help Batman and Robin, but he can't. A leopard can't change his spots. Riddler has this evil nature that is eventually going to come out. This directly inspired a Batman Adam West episode, so it's even got the same riddles about what's the longest word in the world? Smiles, because there's a mile between the 2 S's. And
Riddler constantly outfoxes Batman and Robin, and I love the narrator. There we go. The narrator is so important in these stories because the narrator is talking to the kids and explaining what's so interesting about this. So kind of as the narrator is telling the story, it's like the narrator is selling the kid on the story. Can you figure out the Riddler's clue, kids? You have all the information you need to solve the Riddler's puzzle. And what people make fun of from this era is there will be things like the narrator will say Riddler presses the button on the dashboard, and then Riddler presses the button on the dashboard, which later comic book writers would figure out, oh, I don't need to say Riddler presses the button on the dashboard. I can just show it, and kids will get it. So people make fun of that, but I miss the narrator, because the narrator is great for these kind of exuberant, direct, fast-moving stories, because what they were drawing from was the radio drama. So in the radio drama, the narrator was your only way of knowing what's going on, because you didn't have a visual element at all. They're borrowing the idea of like the radio hero, hey, the spirit, kids, he's bursting through the window with his gun, and will he be able to stop the bank robbers, right? So they're pulling from the popular media of their childhoods to make a Batman story, and we now pull from movies and cartoons, right? So we're a more visual people. And I think the Golden Age and Silver Age writers were a more verbal people. Did I have a point that I lost? Oh, I might have lost a point in all of the tangents. But, shoot, I completely lost that train of thought. I was talking about, oh, yeah. They had a picnic. They had a picnic with the police athletic league, and Batman and Robin show up at the picnic, and then the Riddler leaves them a Riddler, and they leave their picnic behind. So this is a kind of thing which we look back on now, and we say, ha ha, that's so silly. Batman and Robin go to a picnic, and they leave their picnic basket behind, but that's because we're kind of jaded in our age. I do not think this was presented for laughs at the time. I think this was just presented as Batman and Robin, they're heroes, they're part of their civic society, so they do cool things for kids to help them care about the police and care about being athletic, right? And then, oh no, crime happens, so they have to leave behind their picnic. So this is an example of Batman and Robin just being presented as really genuine, really straightforward heroes who do good things in the community, right? And it's only later that we get this idea of, oh, superheroes are so dumb, let's just do silly Billy. Like, if this was a, like, SJW Marvel kind of book, they'd have like some moron come out and say, hey, we're having a picnic basket and we're superheroes. That's totally crazy, right? And that's not funny because that's just being jaded. This is funny because we're looking at it from a different perspective. Now, the comic book has changed in meaning over time. At their time, this was just a really simple little, heroic moment. In our time, because we think of, the Frank Miller Batman, and we think of, the serious, brooding Batman, the idea of Batman and Robin on a picnic with the equivalent of the Boy Scouts, that becomes funny to us now because we understand how the character has changed over time, which actually adds value to these old comic books. They were just fun adventure stories in their own time, and now they've become like a time capsule of what this character has been and how this character has changed and how we've changed. So you've got to read Golden Age comic books. Don't knock them till you try them. They are like fairy tales. They are like fairy tales in that these creators were just sort of rawly coming up with idea after idea after idea after idea after idea as fast as they possibly could, because they figured out they could make money essentially telling bedtime stories or telling fun adventure stories to little kids on cheap pieces of paper that almost cost them nothing. That's why this industry exploded. That's why this industry existed. That's why this industry was able to develop for decades and decades, because of the building blocks that were given to us by a first generation. You can laugh. You can enjoy the silliness of this era of comics and see it as silly, but you can't disrespect the generation that gave us this if you want to learn from that and create your own stories that will have impact years and decades later. So 3 Riddler stories, that's good. I'll probably read more Riddler stories just to see how the character developed and changed over time. There was like a really great thing where they punch the Riddler and they don't understand why they knocked him out, and Batman explains he just anesthetized his face. So I imagined that, well, why didn't he have like giant giant goose egg on both sides of his face after that? But anyway, it is just classic Batman storytelling. That's enough. No more tangents. I'm Norman Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribestar, the best way to support this channel, the better alternative to Patreon. I love my subscribers. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.